This is the Boundless Pursuit Podcast, a show highlighting the purity of the experience without limitation. Each week, we'll bring anglers as diverse as the fish they chase, whether it be from your backyard or your bucket list. Freshwater, saltwater, conventional gear, or fly. We're bringing stories and perspectives from fishermen from all walks of life, from across the country and globe. In the digital age, authentic communication and networking is critical, and I'd love to hear from you about show suggestions, potential guests, or general feedback. And you can reach me at boundlesspursuitfishing@gmail.com or at my website, www.boundless-pursuit.com. That's where you'll find the entire collection of written articles, podcast episodes, and media. I deeply value the feedback, ratings, reviews, and support of my listeners, and I look forward to hearing from you. I'm your host, David Graham. Now let's get on to today's episode. My guest today is 19-year-old angler Nolan Shortt of Ontario, Canada. And I love the opportunities to talk to the newer generation of anglers who seem more and more keen on diversity of species. Nolan showcases his well-roundedness as an Ontario-based angler on his Instagram and YouTube pages, where he's catching fish in all elements: open water, rivers, streams, swamps, on land, ice, and from watercraft. Don't be fooled by the young age. The guy is ahead of his time and consistently posts up trophy-sized specimens of countless species. And on his Instagram page, you'll see it all: salmon, trout, suckers, pike, perch, big sunfish species, whitefish, carp, burbot, catfish, muskies, and more. But Nolan is also a die-hard bowfin fanatic, much like myself. So I had to take time during this conversation to pick his brain about cold water bowfin patterns, where they go, how they behave in colder months. We talk about Nolan's progression as an angler and how he structures his season. He's a good dude and a great representative of the up-and-coming scene of anglers who seem more than ever to appreciate the challenge of multi-species fishing. This is 705 angler Nolan Shortt. But man, I always am open to having people with your style come on, the multi-species guys. I think I've said it time and time again with a lot of the guys who come on here. You know, you got different kinds of anglers. There's like specialists, there's loyalists, there's people who only want to fish a certain style or a certain way. There's people who are extremely flashy. But the multi-species guys, particularly the young ones, are my personal favoritism. So you being 19, right? You said you're 19?
Yes, sir.
But you're the second. You don't got to sir me. I mean, Jesus. I'm not that old. I'm only twice your age. All right. Almost. Well, I'm 37. So almost twice your age. But anyway, yeah, man, looking through your stuff, I mean, you're another one of those guys that is just kind of all over the place. And sometimes they're my favorite conversations, but they're the hardest ones to keep structured. Because it seems like during the course of the year that you're fishing, you're chasing salmon, trout, carp, bowfin, gar, bass, whitefish, pike, a bunch of other ones that I burbot, fishing in the ice, fishing in the swamp, fishing in open water, fishing in tiny creeks. You're all about it, man. So, you know, I know there was some confusion the other day when we were talking. I'm like, where are you from again? I think I said like Maine or something.
Maine, something like that.
But
yeah.
where's home to you? Like, where are you? Where are you fishing?
I'm
Ontario.
fishing all over Ontario.
All right, another Canada guy. Now these always get me excited because Canada is a place I've never been to. My older brother Matt does a lot of fishing in Canada, constantly trying to get me to come with him to Canada. Just the stars haven't aligned. But I think for some people, maybe even me, I've always sort of underrated how diverse Canada's fishing scene is. Mostly because I came up in an era where the fishing programs, it's always like walleye, pike, salmon. You know, so I'm like, that's all that's there.
Yeah,
so,
that's roughly how they put it here. It's mostly the focus is on bass.
Yeah.
How large the bass industry is and how they promote that. but we have all sorts of different species as well in the mix, and that's not just here in Canada. It's all over the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's always kind of been the mold that people have been in recent times breaking, or at least when I was coming up, when I was 19. And before that, it was kind of like the only source of media out there is sport fish. It's all that got showcased. It's crammed in your head. You're like programmed into thinking that these are the fish that are up on the pedestal. If you just go after these fish and you use these products, then you're sure to achieve greatness. But then somewhere along the way, you start to realize that there's more interesting things out there. There's more to fishing than just bass and walleye. So, I think you and I use the same term, multi species angler. It's
Yep.
like a term that's endearing to my heart and I like it. But I've also, in recent times, kind of been like, yeah, it's like, I don't think there's multi species anglers. You're just a fisherman, you're an angler. All the other people are the ones that need a title, the specialists. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Species specialist. Everybody else is a multi species guy. You know what I mean? But, your stuff, when I look through it, just being how diverse it is, it's kind of hard for me to find a landing point on where to start. So we've established you're from Ontario. Now y'all deal with variables that I don't deal with as a Florida guy. It's always warm, a little bit of rain every now and then. I don't got to worry about temperature fluctuations or, heaven forbid, the water freezes over and turns into ice. Walk me through, I guess. I know you're very seasonal, and so you probably have to kind of plan on what your year's going to look like a little more than I do, where everything's sort of the same all year. But what does your year look like? I guess seasonally. Let's start with like early winter, January, New Year.
January walleye. We're doing walleye and opener. Starting the year off on whitefish opener on Lake Simcoe. Always a yearly tradition for us.
Whitefish opener. Is that a popular species of fish that I'm familiar with them? But it's like one of those ones that, again, I'm like, yeah, it's a weird looking fish. I don't see a lot about them. Is that one that a lot of people are busting out the seams on opener to go chase? Or are you having to fight for?
Very,
Really?
very popular fish up our way. It's one of the better tasting fish. I personally don't eat any fish at all, but it is
Mhm.
one of the more popular fish up this way for table fare.
Yeah. And so you're just doing that alongside walleye, or is that like it's
Uh,
one or the other? Or?
it's one or the other. Either I try to get it on Simcoe on a boat if I can, or a kayak and jig them.
Yeah,
But if uh if the weather permits, I'll be out on the ice for walleye.
that's pretty cool. Now, a whitefish, I'm going to come off as being kind of ignorant. I'd always try to preface this to people who are listening. I'm just some dude from the South. I don't know what a whitefish is. I know what they are, but I also know there's some other species of fish up there called like an incanoe or an incanu. I don't know how to pronounce it. You know what I'm talking about? Is that the
No,
same thing?
I'm not quite sure on that word of it.
Incanu or incanoe? Yeah, we'll have to look that one up. It's INCON. Hell, now I'm gonna fail my spelling exam. They look just alike. I don't know if it's the same thing or one's bigger than the other. So I was kind of interested. It was like a personal question. I wanted to know if one was different than the other. But so whitefish, what makes them kind of like so popular up there? It's a sort of a plain looking fish. I don't know that it's necessarily the most flashy looking fish. Is it a table fare thing?
It's a
Is
large table fare fish.
Gotcha.
They're kind of built like a quillback, um, or like just an overly large sucker
Yeah.
that's silver.
They
But
have a sucker mouth or like a forward facing mouth.
they got a sucker mouth. It's the
Okay.
Cisco. It's a Cisco.
Yeah.
Got the upward pointing mouth. Very similar looking to each other, but the Cisco and the whitefish are pretty similar looking.
Okay. Okay. And so that's between that and the walleye. Now, I kind of get the walleye thing. Is this, I mean, in January, when you get out there, I presume everything's frozen. Is this ice fishing or is the lake frozen over yet?
Generally, we're ice fishing. It's pretty sketchy ice to be walking on, but thankfully, I'm with a crew who knows what they're doing most of the time.
I got you. So at what point does the water become where it's not sketchy and you're just dealing with straight up ice?
Well, this last winter was the last couple winters have been extremely bad for ice conditions. So it hasn't been very favorable for that. But as long as you're packing a spud bar and you know your ice safety, it's a great time.
I gotcha. Okay. So like you being the age that you are, is this something that you grew up like with your dad or your grandpa or somebody? I kind of just curious origin wise where you got your kicks in fishing.
Yeah, so I've always fished. Mom would take me out watching Jeremy Wade on TV.
Okay.
Um, Kind of that jam right there, and yeah, I kind of just went on my own with it and learned it all from scratch.
That seems to be kind of a theme. A lot of people are like, I feel like a lot of people give Jeremy Wade hate. I don't know why. And I think it's, I don't want to say jealousy, but it's like, that just seems a little corny to me. But there's definitely been like the River Monsters effect. It's funny you mentioned that. There's been numerous other guys kind of in a similar age bracket where Jeremy Wade was like this catalyst for realizing there's other stuff out there. There's mysterious fish that live below the water surface or under the ice. Whereas prior to that, I don't know, man. Like when I was coming up, if it was my grandpa or my dad, there's like this old school mentality behind, like I said, what fishing's supposed to be. So it's like realizing these other fish were out there a lot of times is because you just accidentally caught one. You're like, well, what the hell is this thing? And then, maybe the person you're with steers you down a path of believing that they're not worth chasing. So it was like kind of a hard thing to escape. I wouldn't say that was my story necessarily, but it's good to see kind of that, it just seems like there's more people open to chasing different kinds of fish now. I think it's because you have access to see the truth behind them, and it's easier to go online and find information about them. But so when it starts turning to a certain point, when winter's in full effect, is everything frozen where you're at? Again,
Generally, yeah.
Or is it just some of it? So you have no choice but to ice fish if you want to come out.
Basically, yeah. The salmon, sometimes that grounds freezes. Usually it doesn't. But you'll oddly get a year where it's safe enough to go to the salmon grounds and jig salmon through the ice.
Yeah. Is that normally catch and keep pretty much strictly when you're pulling them out of the ice? Or is it like, I always wondered, like, then like
for ice fishing, we find it's actually really good release rates on most of our fish.
Yeah.
As long as they're taken care of properly, you're not holding them out of the water 10 years for a picture.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like I'm not the guy that likes cold weather at all. Although I really want to experience ice fishing. I think I would like do it a few times and be ready for it to be over. Like how long are you having to wait? In a 12-month period, how many months out of that is is water hard?
Oh,
couple of months or like a big chunk
of
the year?
Usually it freezes up towards the end of December, early January, and then you'll be ice fishing till around Valentine's Day.
Okay, that's not that bad. I was thinking it was going to go to like May. So
sometimes like early March.
Yeah,
that's if it's a really good year.
I got you. So once it starts transitioning and the ice starts getting thinner or starts fading away, does that kind of open the door to a new season for you? What then do you start to change to once you can't walk around on top of the water?
Usually goes to the stuff that doesn't have any seasons. Rainbow trout have a really good. It's usually steelhead season up when the ice comes out. Steelhead, we got suckers that are phenomenal fight and great bait if you choose to target most swamp fish. And yeah, so once the ice comes out, we're targeting steelhead for the most part.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Is there like some big debate over whether or not it's a true steelhead there? I hear like the steelheaders and the trout guys fighting over what's a steelhead, what's not a steelhead. Or
it's a pretty interesting community, that's for sure. It can be quite toxic with those experts or specialists. They are steelhead when they go out to the lake, but it's just terminology.
Yeah, well, I think people want to be able to bolster their catch up above other people's catches. So yeah, it's always interesting. But so like suckers, like this is where like the conversation is going to start turning to become more curious because I get the allure behind a steelhead and I get the draw to a walleye. You know what I mean? It's like there's like a societal pressure to go after certain fish because that's that's the real fish. That's the true fish. That's the sport fish. That's the worthy fish. And I'd always wondered if the culture was similar up there where you're at as it is to sometimes down here. Although I feel like it's a changing culture. There's definitely areas still, and there was definitely a time when it was like taboo to even consider intentionally pursuing something like a sucker. And I'm sure we'll get into the gar and the bowfin in due time, but like sucker fishing. At what point did that kind of get on your radar and be like, this is a fish that I want to go catch, not just for bait, but for sport and because it's fun?
Well, for me, I don't need any of the fish I catch. So for me, it's just all about whatever gets the drag screaming. So I found I can get a nice amount of suckers, especially using a center pin, which is a fancy kind of basic reel, but also on a spinning combo. Super good fighting fish, and on top of it, it's a bonus. I can use it for bait.
Yeah. Are you when you're out there fishing for suckers, are you like specifically targeting suckers, or is it
Yeah.
like you go out to the water and okay, so I didn't know if you're like targeting like I'm gonna go out to the water and catch everything that I see. Or if it's
No,
like today.
for suckers when they're in the river, it'll generally be just suckers and steelhead. Most of the rivers only have suckers. It's when the steelhead are coming back into the lake, and you'll sometimes get one, but when I'm targeting suckers, I'm usually just catching
What
suckers.
species of suckers do y'all have? Because I mean, there's suckers, there's red horse, there's so many different kinds of red horse and suckers.
We have two or three different super common sucker species. White suckers being the most common.
Yeah. What are the others? Golden red
We
horse or
got we got
something?
red horse. We got so many to name.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I don't like targeting. I just like getting the white suckers. Kind of harder and a bit mysterious to catch the once big red stripe down the side. Not 100% off the top, but some of them look really cool.
Are you targeting them all the same way? What are you using? Night crawlers?
Yeah, we're usually drifting worms.
Yeah, yeah. That's pretty cool. So then like when you are targeting you target them for sport, but then you said on the occasion you'll harvest them for bait.
Yeah.
What the heck are you using them for? Are you using them whole for like a pike or a
Uh,
muskie, or are you using them to chunk bait?
it depends on how big the suckers we harvest are. We'll dice them up at the river, or we'll fillet them at the river. Sometimes we keep them whole if they're like 7 to 10 inches. Not not usually that big when they're in the river though. But yeah, I use that bait for gar, catfish, a lot of catfish, and
Yeah.
bowfin.
It's always good. And you gotta go to the bait store. It's nice when you can get your, especially when it's a bigger one and like one fish will last like an entire day.
Yeah, no, it's quite funny you mentioned the bait shops. I work at my local store, and I get to deal with all that every day,
Yeah.
and it's quite enjoyable experience.
That's pretty cool. So you're working in the bait, you still working in the bait shop, or this is like a summer job
I
or
got
something?
I got off at 5 and hopped on this podcast.
Uh, that's pretty cool. Well, that's always good because then you can get local knowledge. I don't know, tackle stores are always fun to get into. But yeah, so this is around springtime, I'm guessing. Like,
Ice out. It'll be very very start of April. April 15th usually is the day.
yeah. And when you're taking these suckers to take them for something like, say, a bowfin or a gar, is that because it's happening at the same time, or are you storing them away to be used later on?
We're vacuum sealing it and storing it away till
Uh,
later.
I gotcha. Yeah. So your photos of the bowfin, I can't resist getting on the topic of the bowfin. It's probably better to get on it early
Yeah.
so that I have time to get off of it for other things. But your bowfin photos are some of the best that I've seen. The best color, showcasing them really well to where you can see all the details of the fish. Real big ones and like gnarly looking ones with the great colors. At what point in the time of the year did those start coming out? Because I'll tell you, man, I've been doing the bowfin thing for a long, long time. And like I get a lot of questions from people about bowfin fishing, which I love and I appreciate. I think it's cool. But a lot of people ask me like, well, what do you do when it gets cold? What do you do with cold water bowfin? I'm like, I have my ideas on it, but I've not really lived in places where it gets cold by your standards. At what point do you start pulling out the bowfin gear? Like, what is the climate like? What's
It
the
is
temperature
all year
like?
for bowfin. They are on the menu all year.
All year.
We'll ice fish them.
See, now that I need to know about. So I want to backtrack and get back into the ice thing then, because that's a crazy one. I've seen ice fishing photos for bowfin and videos, but that's a curious one because a lot of people ask, where do bowfin go when it gets cold? So where are you targeting them? Is it
In
are you in like
marinas.
okay? Is it like are they in deep water or are they in like 3 feet of water? Like are they like you cut open the ice and like the bottom's right there?
Generally it's 12 to 14 feet.
Okay,
Near
so they're
near spawning bays.
okay. So they're in deep for bowfin. I think you would consider that to be deep water. People
Yep.
that are familiar with bowfin would say that that's deep water. How close is the nearest flat though? I mean, are they pretty? Are they still
Right on a
pretty?
flat. These marinas are dredged out, and the second they leave the marina, it's like a 4 foot flat for miles.
That's so interesting. So like, okay, so then when it turns, let's say in the heat of the summer, now we're going to start bouncing around a little bit. So in the dead of the winter, in the ice, you're fishing near the marina in the deep water. When it's the hottest part of the summer, how hot does it get there? What is your peak
Uh,
heat?
Generally, it's 30, 35 is our peak.
Oh,
We
but you're
used
doing
to
like Celsius, so
we're
I don't
doing
even know what that
Celsius,
is.
so it's a little different here. It'll roughly like it'll be, I'd say it's around 50 Fahrenheit.
Okay, surely it's more than that
No, yeah,
in,
maybe
in
not.
the summertime. Anyway, middle of the summer when it gets hot, how far from the marina are you going to catch them then? Are they still kind of in that general area?
We'll get them in the marina still. They'll be in big weed canals,
Yeah,
big
that's interesting.
expanses, and we have a local marsh. It's a wildlife marsh. Um, but there's a river that runs through it, and they absolutely love that river because it's just
Yep.
swamp cattails.
It's that is a funny dynamic and just geographically. I mean, I fished for bowfin in 7 different states here in the US. But I always kind of wondered like behaviorally how they are spanning across, but that I haven't been obviously that far up. But I always try to like maintain to people that where you find a bowfin, the bowfin that you caught will probably spend 99% of its life within a 200-yard radius of wherever you caught it. It's like, so I always, and it's funny when I tell people who are just trying to start learning how to find bowfin, I'm like, go to your nearest marina, go to your nearest boat ramp, go to places where they've dredged out channels through shallow, weedy areas. Even if it's a high foot traffic public area, that's usually where they are because it's like they want the access to the deep water, the immediate access. So it's like it's interesting that you're catching them right there. Just makes sense. And then the summer, the prime, they probably just go bloop, and hop right up there onto the shallows.
They come right into the shallows at night, and that's how we get a lot of our bowfin.
Yeah. So when you're catching them through the ice, are you just dropping baits down and waiting them to come, or are you jigging for them?
You can jig them. I've seen it done. Generally, I just set a couple tip ups up in
Yeah.
like 10 feet of water and put a little live shiner on, and gets the job done.
Are you fishing them down near the bottom or in the
Yeah,
middle or what?
right off the bottom, probably like an inch or two.
Okay. And just behaviorally, what if, I mean, I know you can't exactly see them. Does it seem like they've become more slow and sluggish and groggy or?
Yeah, they get real slow.
Yeah.
It's not worth aggressively targeting them. Generally, I don't even bother. But if I have nothing better to do with an afternoon, the bay's 2 minutes down the road, so no
Yeah.
excuse.
Because I always wondered, like, when it's frozen over, I mean, especially a lot of those more ancient fish, like they have that slow metabolism to where like they can deal with famines, they can deal with long periods without a meal. Like I would have always envisioned a bowfin just sort of sitting there for long periods of time, not moving, not needing to move. But I always wondered the guys that catch them through the ice, did they just happen to drop it right in front of where the fish was already at? Or is that fish actively moving around searching for something to eat?
It's generally on the prowl. They're very slow, probably one tail kick every like 5 minutes,
Yeah.
just crawling. The gar, funny you mentioned other species through the ice, because the gar, they'll stack on top of each other. And it kind of keeps the heat. I think it keeps the heat between them. And you can't drop a bait down without accidentally catching a gar.
Yeah, that's cool. And I've seen a couple things recently with ice fishing for bowfin that I thought was real fascinating. I read one account of a guy that said he's had them jump out of the hole onto the ice. Like they came up to the hole and jumped out and landed on the ice. I think I've read a couple of them like that from different people. I'm like, what? And then I saw one video. They must have had two holes drilled because it was like a camera that was facing towards where the other hole was. And it was this video of this bowfin coming up to the hole, and it was like trying to like swim through the hole. It was the weirdest thing ever. It's like putting its head through the hole. And the best thing I can guess is like, you know how they will gulp
Breathe.
surface
Yeah.
oxygen. I'm like, what is it doing? Trying to come up to the hole and breathe?
I've never had that happen personally, but I'd imagine they're just coming up, gulp some air.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That was going to be my thing. I was always curious I was kind of curious if you had any kind of visitors from a bowfin coming up to the hole up top.
No, not yet.
Oh, that's cool. Well, so then I think that that's like a fair assessment for a lot of the people who've asked. It also seems like the common sense answer when people ask, what about in the dead of the winter? Where do they go when it's cold? I've always told people normally where I fish, it's near deep water access anyway. I think a lot of the guys who don't have the answer to that are the ones that are fishing way up on these massive expansions of shallow flats and they're nowhere near deep water. Or they're way back in a little tiny little swampy creek that's nowhere near deep water. I always tell people like I prefer fishing for bowfin in shallow water that's right near a drop off. It seems like where the bigger ones like to live anyway. So
yeah, I find what is going on?
I got you still. I can still see you.
I find the big bowfin in the winter tend to hang out where you're fishing for them in the summer. If you're fishing live bait in the summer, that's more than likely where they'll be in the winter.
Yeah. Yep. That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's one thing I have no experience. I've caught them in a lot of different ways and a lot of different places, even in the middle of winter when I had to throw a jacket on. But in the ice, I always thought was so interesting. I think they're widely kind of considered, at least down here, as almost like a southern fish, a warm water fish, like a deep south back in the swamps fish. So it's just it was a weird thing when you see photos of them coming through ice. So that's pretty cool. And then the gar, yeah. So you're using shiners, but you said you're also keeping some of the suckers for that. Yeah, I mean, because I was kind of curious if you favored a live bait over a chunk bait for something like a bowfin. I didn't know if everybody's got their preference, but
I find if we fillet them and get the meat real loose, they're able to gulp it back real easy rather than a dense bait that's kind of not as easy to just gulp back.
Yeah, that's kind of been my thing too. I think when I first started bowfin fishing, I only wanted to use live baits. I was just convinced that the bait pulsing in the water was going to attract a more aggressive response. And there's probably some truth to that. But then I started realizing them damn baits just want to hide. I kept having to probably, when you're fishing for bowfin, a lot of times you're fishing near snags, you're fishing near structure, and it's just inconvenient to put a lively bait down there near stumps and logs and twigs and weeds. The bait just keeps going and hiding. So, you still there?
Yeah, they'll go into the weeds.
No, I thought you froze up for a second.
Yeah, it's being weird for some reason.
Yeah, I kind of moved mostly towards fillet bait. The other thing too is like I had problems with other stuff eating the baits. Like I want to catch bowfin, and then if I had a live bait, I was catching bass, I was catching this and that. I getting a lot more gar. But so, and talking about fish, like the perception of all this stuff's always interesting to me. The whys of catching something like a bowfin. I kind of remember a time where, especially, it was like, if you said you're wanting to go catch a sucker, you're wanting to go catch a bowfin, like I'm targeting gar, people would be like, what? People like, what are you talking about? I feel like there's less of that now, but I am curious what it's like up in Canada. Are they a well-received species at this point?
Terribly received.
Really?
Still considered a trash fish, and it's not too uncommon to go to some of my bowfin spots and see 5 or 6 on the shore.
That's disappointing. Yeah, well, I think they still got a steep hill to climb, but it seems like it's gone away. But why do you? I mean, where do you think those people went wrong? I know this is kind of an open-ended question, but it's like you went one way, they've gone another way. What do you think is the difference? And like how that perception can get changed? You know what I mean?
I think it's the narrative behind the snakehead. Up here, people think, oh, it's a snakehead, or it's
Huh.
eating all the walleye, or
Yeah.
it's eating all the bass.
Yeah, I think that the fact that they're a predator and therefore they must compete with this other fish that I like more is usually where it goes south. But yeah. But anyway, but I mean, so when you were coming up and you were fishing, you just I don't know, why did you decide that they were worth chasing? You know what I mean?
It is by far them and king salmon are the two best fighting fish we have. I don't care if it's next to a smallmouth. I don't care if it's next to a largemouth. Whatever. A bowfin, pound for pound, is gonna outfight a smallmouth.
Yeah, yeah. That's like one of those debates that can cause fights. I think they're different. Actually, I think I even had this conversation on a previous podcast where we were talking about bowfin versus. It was like a listener question that came through. I think when I was doing one of those, which I haven't done in a long time. It was like bowfin versus smallmouth bass. When you start comparing it, it's like you can't. It's just two different things, two different styles, two different environments. It's it's just different. I don't know. It's to me, it's like I love bowfin, but I think in a straight line pool where it's just raw power, maybe there's other fish more powerful. To me, it's just the chaos. It's just like that's to me that's a one dimensional fighter. If a fish can just pull really hard, or if a fish is really fast, or a fish just only jumps a lot but they're not super powerful. It's like the bowfin just throws everything at you. So that's pretty cool. And as we know now, the species that you're chasing is different than the species that I'm chasing. Oh, the same species, but now they've been recognized as subspecies.
Yeah,
But
the different
I think
variants.
that I think that it sounds to me like they're probably pretty similar. It's just the colors are different. But
Yeah,
yeah, man.
we find the ones that are. Oh, I forget what the main species is called. Oh, did it cut?
Well, the video is like freezing, but I can still hear you just fine. The video
Okay, there
doesn't
we go.
matter. People really only listen to these anyway. No, the main one is Amia calva, or that was the first one. I don't know if you would consider it the main one, um, but that's the one that's down here. The ruddy bowfin, they call it now.
Yeah, we have the OCE. I just call them the OCE ones. They're the ones that get nice lime and green,
Yeah, yeah,
and they're the most prevalent ones up here, and definitely the ones that are the coolest looking.
yeah. Y'all definitely got the look appeal, especially when the males hit that spawn color. But yeah, I think they call them like spot tail bowfin. Ours get the spot tail. It's just not the exaggerated oscillus eye with the bright ring around it is much less exaggerated with the ones down here. They're just kind of brown, just kind of dull. um, yeah, man, that's cool. So like, and then between that, like as your year goes on, like you're mixing in, like let's say I want to get kind of backtrack on how you follow the course of the year. Um, you get ice out. Again, this is new stuff to me. I don't deal with ice out or any of that. At what point does spring roll around, and what types of fishing does that bring forth?
Spring generally rolls around. When I think of spring, I'm thinking May. It's after the ice, and it starts. Stuff starts turning green. Um, once spring hits, pike opens on May 1st. Pike and walleye.
Mm.
So we have the opportunity to chase some giant pike fresh out of spawn, and then slowly when I'm pike fishing, I'll see bowfin.
Okay. Now, are they kind of in the same similar habitats? That's what I've kind of looked at when I look at the videos of them. It looks like they're in similar areas. I don't know if they live kind of harmoniously with one another, if they're competing per se.
It's pretty harmonious. I've never had bowfin attack a pike, and I've never had a pike attack a bowfin, at least that I've seen. And it's generally when the pike are leaving the spawning grounds, the bowfin, the scar, and the carp start coming in.
Okay. Yeah, that is an interesting dynamic. It's fun to see how the bowfin and stuff interact with other predators. That's kind of a necessary thing. The competition that's happening between the two. I'm sure one's eating the other. They're probably eating one another. That's normal. That's natural. It's not something people need to be getting upset about. That's a sign of a healthy system. So I never understood this desire to throw one up on the bank and throw things out of their natural order. You're messing things up. You're messing up the natural design and the natural order of things that made the fishery what it was. So now when you're catching these other, there's this one species of fish that's up there. I wouldn't say it looks like a bowfin, but it's like there's like some vague parallels there. The burbot. I think that's the right name.
Yeah, the burbot.
Now, I only see photos of those ice fishing. Can you not catch them whenever it's?
You can.
Okay.
Guys generally get them as bycatch when they're fishing for whitefish. It's not hard to go out for whitefish and catch 5 or 6 burbot, but they are phenomenal fighting fish. Great table fare, and they're starting to get a really good rep behind them now in terms of being good table fare and a good fighting fish. Whereas before they never had that.
That's good. That, the one thing I kind of noticed, at least down here, it's like people associate a fish's worth with what it looks like. There's a lot behind its physical appearance. Not that I care what a fish looks like, but I mean, I look at something like a burbot and I'm like, that is an ugly fish. But not by my standards, but like other people would look at that. Somebody that doesn't want to know one fish from the next would look at that and say, ew, like, ew, that's gross. So I like look at a fish like that. I'm like, this thing looks like some kind of slimy eel, bowfin, catfish, slimy eel thing.
That's basically all they are.
Yeah, and I'm like that would surely be considered a trash fish almost anywhere else. I guess its saving grace is that somebody realized that they taste good, and that has saved them. But
it sure has, especially over the last, I'd say 5 years. It's 2024 as we're filming this, and over the last 5 years, I've seen more being kept for table fare rather than just thrown in the hut and just stacked on top of each other.
Yeah. I think I've seen that too. I mean, I've always been kind of the guy on the outside looking in, especially with some of these more unique looking species. And that's like, it's one of those ones that has the eye appeal. Granted, it's like, it's a weird looking fish, but like it draws interest. You're like, what is that thing? But I've definitely seen more of those over time. But then it makes you wonder, like, when is it going to be the bowfin's turn? But I don't know if they're ever going to taste any better than they already taste. So, yeah, which is a debatable topic in itself. I have never eaten one. I'm the same way as you. I don't eat any of the fish that I catch, so don't know.
That seems to be a common occurrence amongst some of my angler friends. None of us like eating the fish we catch.
They look. I wouldn't say they look like a bowfin. I think it's the long eel-like fin. Where are they inhabiting? Is it super deep water? Yeah. Are they up in the same? Oh, okay.
They push shallow to spawn in the winter. So ice fishing there, when the whitefish come up on the shoals to spawn, so are the burbot. And that's when guys are getting them. And that's why people generally are getting a lot more, is because during January, February, and March, those fish are coming up onto the shoals where people are fishing for whitefish and getting them. But guys can get them in the summer. I've got them in the summer jigging lake trout. I've got, mainly jigging lake trout. I've caught them. You can target them, but I don't want to be out in the boat all night.
Yeah. So at what point, as things start warming up, do you really start to intentionally go out and target something like a long-nosed gar? I've seen, at least recently, it seems recently you've kind of been on this gar high. You've been sending me some photos of some of the gar you're catching. I'm seeing them in your stories. Is this kind of like the beginning of the gar getting active?
The gar coming out of spawn. I don't like targeting them when they're spawning too much. They get people kill them, so it's one of those fish where I'd rather just leave it alone and not draw any attention to it until a little later on in the season when they thin out and they've spawned.
Yeah, I've always had a hard time catching them when they're spawning anyway. They seem like one of those fish, like when they're really in the thick of spawn, getting a bite out of one is hard. You might get one of like the males that's hanging on the outskirts, but that big female and all the males packed in on her, I could never get them to eat. But you're right. They're like a sitting duck for anybody that wants to go kill them. I know around here, when you see big pods of long-nosed gar spawning, you can walk up and grab them by hand. You can stick a dip net down and just scoop them.
It's the same way here. and I don't want to bring that negative attention towards those areas, especially during spawn.
Yeah. I've heard mixed reviews about their popularity in Canada. It seems like, at least with the fly anglers, they've really kind of in very recent times picked up tremendously in popularity. Have you observed that at all up where you're
Yeah,
at?
the local fly guide I was talking to the other day, and he managed to catch four of them, not too far from where I was catching them, and I've noticed the fly anglers are starting to key in on the swamp fish a bit more.
Yeah. They always seem like they're the first ones to start entertaining doing something different for whatever reason. But your gar populations, are you typically favoring fishing for them in moving water like rivers, creeks, streams, or are you in open water fishing for the gar in like a lake system?
I live on Georgian Bay. It's one of the Great Lakes here in Ontario,
Okay.
and I target them on large rock flats and shelves.
Okay. Because that's what I was curious is, it seems like there's like different strategies for them when they're moving water in rivers. Lately, when I've fished for longnose gar, I'm strictly going to rivers and I'm strictly going to, you know, places with the current flow. And it's like, it's a river system. You're river fishing. But in the past, I did a lot of lake fishing and I don't know, man. I found them to be more challenging in a lake. So I was kind of curious where you're normally finding them hanging out. So you're up kind of in rock flats, you said?
Yeah, well, I catch gar drop shotting them in deeper water as well.
Okay.
Right now, currently, it's June, and I'm getting them on rock flats. But they have a migratory pattern, just like the salmon and most
Mm-hmm.
other fish. So right now, they're on their way towards their fall transition point, and that's right now they're just sitting up on rocks enjoying the sun.
So are you like sight fishing them for them
Yeah,
when they're doing that? That's always fun. If nothing else, I always felt like the long nose gar was like the ultimate predator to hone in your sight fishing skills with. It's like, it's such a great learning fish, if nothing else. One, they're pretty highly visible. Two, you can like read the water to figure out where they're going to be, especially in a river system. You can kind of read eddy pools and like find the fish, but seeing how they interact with a bait fish and all that stuff. And then you're going to be missing so many of them. So you got to kind of work out, I don't know, the temperament flares you have when you're missing fish. This is a numbers game, constantly missing them, not being able to get the hook in them. But sight fishing for them is one of my favorite things. It's so cool. What are you normally throwing at them? Are you doing the hookless lure thing, or are you throwing like just regular lures at them?
generally when I'm sight fishing them, I'm throwing a piece of rope or I'm drop shotting them.
Yeah,
I
the drop
like
shotting is different. I've never tried that. When they're in deep water, how do you know that they're there? Are you running some kind of
good old
sonar or
live scope.
something?
Good old live
Ah,
scope.
that's cool.
You can see them pretty steady. They're not hard to find on live scope, and you can just sharpshoot them with a drop shot.
That'd be fun. I would like to try that. For the most part, me fishing for longnose gar has either been tossing a lure out in the path of a roller or straight up sight fishing them. But to find them in deep water and do that, that'd be a lot of fun. Um, yeah, that's neat. That'd be something new. But yeah, so you do the rope lure thing. That's interesting. That's been around for a while now. But I didn't know some people are like staunchly against the rope lures. I don't mind them. I'm not against rope lures. It's just the old thing is like, well, what happens if they break your line? What happens if it somehow comes off and the fish is like doomed? I didn't
Yeah,
know how you felt about that.
no, I find it's not a hookless setup. I put a tube head in like a quarter ounce tube head that I use for bass. Once the hook bends out, I have no problem putting it in a piece of rope and using that as a tie on spot
Yeah,
and putting a stinger hook, a little tiny treble behind it, and throwing it like a tube.
yeah. I hadn't thrown rope lures in a while, but I always did the same thing. I'd always put a hook in there because I don't find something else would come grab it. I'm like, well, I want to hook whatever bites this thing. But yeah, are you tying your own?
Yeah, I make all my own.
Yeah, you
You
almost kind of
can't
have to. There's really not a lot of. I mean, you see them sold online, but you almost kind of have to tie your own.
for the rope lures, it's always best just to go to the dollar store and buy a piece of paracord and have fun with it.
Yeah,
And you can always use fly streamers, the big pike and musky fly streamers. depending on the material, it does the same job.
Yeah. And are you just kind of chasing them all throughout the whole entire summer? Is that kind of like a species you can ride out the whole summer on?
I can ride out the whole summer on them. I don't like doing it too much
Yeah.
because there is other stuff I can go catch. But it's definitely got a special spot when the dead of summer hits.
Yeah. Well, once let's say, you're in spring and then once summer hits, is there like a species of fish that's kind of like a non-negotiable, like, oh, every summer we're gonna have to devote some time to go after this type of fish?
Yeah, the king salmon.
Ooh, I could see that.
Downrigging kings in the summer is so fun.
That's cool.
They're coming into the bay to come spawn before they stage, and it's a good time on the boat, and they'll fight you real good.
Yeah. Where are they coming from and where are they going to?
They're coming from the big expanse of open water, and they're coming to the holes. This spot is called the hole, but they come into these deeper holes near the spawning rivers.
That's pretty cool. How big are we talking here? Because I mean, that's a species of fish that
They're
I don't know
not
if
they're not crazy big here.
yeah.
In Georgian Bay, they're a nice quality adult king salmon that's about to go around the river is anywhere from 15 to 20 pounds, and that's a really nice fish.
Mhm.
But if I go somewhere towards Lake Ontario or up to Superior, I'll see fish upwards of 40 pounds swimming in the river.
That's pretty cool. Is that like a catch and release game, or are you there to take a few fish? Well, you said
It's
you don't ever eat any of them. Yeah.
strictly catch and release in the river for the most part. The odd time I'll keep a fish if my mom wants one or if a relative wants one, and I'll usually make sure it's a female as well because I can take some skin out of it as well.
Mhm. Yeah. No, that's awesome. That is one style of fishing I really want to do, whether it's the landlocked versions or the ocean run. I don't care. It's like, that's like one species I need to check off. Um, that's cool. Now the carp fishing that you do, that's an interesting one because there's like obviously there's so many different ways to chase carp. And there's so many different ways to chase a lot of fish. But at what point do you start catching these big? You catch some really big carp. When does that kind of start picking up?
It starts picking up second week of May till right around now. The
Okay.
carp's starting to taper. You can catch them all summer. I like catching them on a center pin, drifting it, or I like bobber fishing them, casting into the shallow water, like sight fishing them with a bobber, and just putting a piece of corn right on their nose and
I
watching
gotcha.
them.
Yeah, because I didn't know if you were throwing like jigs or throwing lures or throwing any artificials at them or bait fishing.
Strictly corn.
Okay. And what kind of regulations they have up there? Some places it's like pre-baiting an area or like, throwing baits out to get them coming in, chumming. It's so effective with big carp, but some areas just flat out don't let you do it. It's illegal. I didn't know if y'all had any kind of regulations that would prevent you from doing that.
The regulations are pretty loose. You're not supposed to feed them, I don't believe. Some lakes, it varies quite a bit depending on the lakes, but most of the time, if you're fishing and you're putting some corn next to it, it's fine. But I don't do any of that just because I'm putting one little kernel on and drifting it.
I feel like that's a more difficult way to catch them. Maybe not. When they got to find that one random kernel in the area that they may already be feeding on other stuff. Yeah, that's. Are you sight fishing for them too, or is it just you're
Yeah.
in a bay where you know that they're at?
They like right around like the second week of May to right now, they're in the shallows to spawn. They're
Okay.
not too hard to see thousands of carp sitting in a bay. And if you cast under a tree or near some structure, there's gonna be a couple carp sitting under it.
Yeah. So now, right now, what season is this considered for y'all up there? Because to me, I'm
Uh
in the summer.
I'd say it's late spring.
Yeah.
Everything's starting to come out of spawn now, or just wrapping up spawn, and now it's starting to go towards the summer.
Do you have like certain ambitions for the rest of this year on things that you want to do in the summer, in the fall, in the winter that you already know that you're going to do because that's just what you do? That's what your year is supposed to be. But on top of that, is there things that you want to try new this
There's not
year?
really much to try new. I'd like to fly fish a little bit more.
Yeah.
I'm complete rookie to fly fishing currently.
Me too.
Not really something I've ever looked into. I
Yeah.
did pick up a center pin a couple years back and started using one of those. It's definitely improved the way I fish the rivers and made it more enjoyable.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I feel like I've done some fly fishing in the past, but it's like, I'm happy to admit that I'm a total novice, complete and utter beginner. But it's like, it's definitely something I want to add to the repertoire in the next couple It's just like, every time I get enough money to like buy a combo, I want to just get other stuff. Like, I don't even have one. You know what I mean?
yep.
It's like, geez, this is expensive stuff.
It's
I
the
just
it's
need,
the same way for me. I always look at a new fly combo, or I look at a couple jerk baits or some other
yeah,
baits that I know I can go catch a fish on right now.
right. Well, it's every time I'm about ready to get into that, I break one of the rods that I already have. I'm like, well, nope, just need to replace that one. Or, my stuff's takes such a beating during the course of the year and over the years. I'm like, yeah, I'd rather just replace the gear that I already use all the time than get something new. So anyway, but yeah, so like a lot of these podcasts kind of start like this, but I didn't. A lot of them always start, well, how did you start fishing? But I'm curious, like, again, just to go back, your early goings as an angler. And actually, I looked on your Instagram. If you scroll to the bottom of it, it's like you looking like a little bitty kid fishing. So I know
Yeah,
this is something you've been doing for a while. Like, where did it sort of begin, or do you remember just like your early interest in fishing
my
and how it
my mom
developed?
my mom has pictures of me from when I was just a little kid with a fishing pole, and I've always liked being outside. And with fishing, I was always able to go fish, and I'm located near the water, and there's no reason not to go fish rather than play inside, play video games inside all day.
Yeah. So what were the starting species when you were first starting to fish? It was like you just keep it pretty simple in
Just
the
the
early going.
bluegill, the
Yeah.
bass. I remember the big thing for me was pike. I always wanted to catch a pike. It was a big bucket. Same with a muskie. I remember those were some of the first fish where I was set to go catch.
Yeah, you get enamored by the big toothy ones for sure. That's cool. Now, did you have like a groups of buddies that were into the same stuff, or you a
Not at all.
consummate
I
loner?
I was always a loner until I started really getting into the community, and I've over the last 3 years I found a couple buddies that I've been able to go fishing with. That's made it more enjoyable. But I'm glad I was more of a loner in the
Yeah,
starting years.
yeah, yeah. That you're speaking my language now. I've kind of been the same way. I feel like a lot of the guys that end up going down that route of chasing lots of different kinds of fish, just more often than not, like inherently would prefer to spend their time by themselves. I don't, for whatever reason. I feel like if you're influenced by outside forces more, you're more likely to be persuaded to follow a certain way that, like to follow a certain path. I don't know. It just seems like the guys that are like have big, giant core groups of people fish for less things. I don't know why. It's
Yeah,
just been my observation. You know what I mean?
yeah. Thankfully, I've slowly gained the attention of other anglers around my age in my province that like targeting the same things I do. So it makes it really enjoyable to have some buddies to help capture some of the moments with as well.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing. And I've been a kind of a tone on this podcast. I've mentioned this or something similar. There's less people that want to go chase lots of different kinds of fish for whatever reason. Like, if the community's smaller, but being that it's smaller, you're more likely to find somebody you have something in common with. That makes sense. So it's like it's easier to get into a group of people that are into multi-species fishing and immediately click up and find somebody. This is somebody I could partner up with. You know what I mean? Whereas like if you take 10 different bass fishermen, hell, all 10 of them probably have nothing in common, don't want to spend any time with each other. Or they're going to be competing. But yeah, that's cool. I don't know, man. It's like I'm all about the thrill of the variety. So it's like I know you were influenced to a degree with the river monsters thing. Is there you're 19. Are you well, I'm thrown off by my ages. Are you going into college? Are you in
I
college?
finished high school. I'm not doing any college currently.
Okay, maybe a smart thing. That maybe the better idea.
Trades look a little more suitable,
Oh
or
yeah.
doing lodges, doing working up at lodges
Okay, that's cool
looks
because
like the
that's a kind
drill.
of I'm curious. You're definitely at that age now where there's a lot of decisions to be made, and you're going to be hitting a lot of crossroads. I'm sure the fishing will remain the same, but the days, the immediate days coming up could have a long lasting impact on the fishing that you do and the time that you get to do it. So it's kind of curious where you're headed. I don't know if you're heading off to school. I don't know if you're thinking about doing fishing
Full
in
time.
the industry or doing something
Yeah.
related to fishing.
Uh, I recently signed with Pure Fishing. One of the brands I've always looked up to, and we got Bob Azumi and a lot of the other guys as well. Great products and the brand itself. And now I finally got the opportunity to start working with it and being into the industry a little bit more. It's definitely helping me in that direction.
That's pretty cool. How'd that come to be? I mean, Pure Fishing is like an umbrella. I mean, it's like there's a lot of brands under Pure Fishing, tons of them. It's like a big like conglomeration of fishing brands. How'd that kind of come to play?
Social media has done wonders
Yeah,
for the brands.
that's good. It seems like it's becoming progressively more difficult. So you should consider yourself blessed there. It's more and more people entering, more and more people trying to get that type of attention. I know it's harder, but that was kind of what I was curious with. So you're kind of you're favoring actually working in fishing, and the gears are turning there. What about ambitions in fishing itself? Like the types of fishing that you're doing? Is there any kind of are you looking to expand beyond what you're already doing, or just dial in the immediate area that you already live?
I'm for the most part, right, the last couple of years, I'd say the last 4 years I've been full-time fishing. Um, but I'd like to do guiding full time as well as content creation in the mix, just on top of that.
Mhm.
And that's the direction I'd like to take it.
Yeah. At least the guiding. It's like I would. Yeah. I don't know if you'd want to do one or the other. It's definitely good to do a little bit of multiple things if you're trying to. At least if you're trying to. I don't know. Have the monetary comfort. You almost want to make sure that you have different things. Whether you're developing a product, selling a product, whether you're providing a service, guiding. But then while doing guiding, you're also doing content creation if that's going to be your thing. Different sources of income because fishing can be expensive. So yeah. Well, what about you talk about you were inspired to a degree with river monsters. Are you looking to do any kind of like chase certain kinds of fish in the foreseeable future? Let's say, and then within the next 5 years, it's like, ah, man, in the next 5 years, I'm going to go try to tackle this type of fish. Whether it's something that's close to home, or maybe you're talking about going somewhere real far away.
Yeah, I got a list. I know snakehead is at the top. Big sturgeon at the Fraser River is also on the list,
Mm,
and black marlin. I like to go get
okay.
a I like to go get a marlin and marlin snakehead. I really want a marlin and a snakehead, but
Yeah.
the sturgeon can wait a little bit, but the wolffish as well is definitely on that list.
It's funny because those are all three or all four such completely and totally different kinds of things. So it's funny, and that's the way you want to keep it. Keep there being some variety. Keep there being some guessing. Keep there being some staying on your toes. I don't know, man. Like at least for me, as I've progressed in this whole thing, you get more and more hungry and have a deeper desire to do something where you feel like you're new again, where you feel like you're starting over, like, oh, this is totally foreign to me. Like I'm having to learn this. It's like it's more fun to have to like unpack and intertwine and untangle your own intellect as an angler. And I feel like when you go further away and you go out of your element, I don't know. To me, I just get more interested in that. That's not to say I don't absolutely love going and doing the things that I've been doing since I was a kid. Like this weekend, I'm going to go bowfin fishing if plans stay together. So where it's like that's like home for me. And nothing can replace that. But man, there's just something about going doing something new. So snakehead fishing, that's an interesting one. Are we talking about the northern snakehead or like the snakehead down closer to where I live?
Down
Bullseye
closer where
snakehead.
you live, the bullseye snakehead.
Really? Okay. Are you gonna be able to handle the heat? Because this Florida heat ain't no joke. When are you coming to do that?
November. I got a trip booked for November down there.
Okay. That'd be cool. Are you going with a guide or are you just going to kind of like, are you doing some research and just trying to figure it out on your own?
Research and just wing it. I feel like I can generally find some waters to fish as long as I do my research and I make sure I'm fishing the right waters. Well, we should be golden.
Definitely a species I think you can DIY. I think I caught my first snakehead when I moved down here on my first try, but I've also had some days here where it's a weird one. Their behaviorally can be a very strange. It's like they're either on or off. Like there'll be days I would like. I mean, you just can't keep them off if you're throwing frogs. So just be murdering your frogs like crazy. Then there'll be days where you see the fish, you're looking right at them. You can't get them to bite anything. They're refusing to bite. That's an interesting one. What made you interested in the snakehead?
Their elusiveness in terms of just I can't get them up here, and they look kind of like a bowfin, and just the wrap they have behind them, the big narrative, big mean snakehead.
Yeah,
Sounds like something I want to go get. The
yeah,
gear breakers, anything that'll break your tackle, well, sign me up.
yeah. I guess they kind of fit into that monster fish mold. It's like a taboo thing. You read the headlines like, "Oh, the monster fish that can walk on land and
Attacks cows.
yeah, attacks people and can slither across the ground like a snake." I think you're going to be. I think that they will meet all of your expectations and then they will leave some impressions on you that you didn't anticipate. That is a very, very unique species of fish that you'll probably have a lot of fun with. And you'll find that if you going in the right place, um, yeah, you'll find them to be a very addicting. That is one type of fish that has such a massive culture behind them. Uh, and I totally get it. It's like, I think if I lived on the East Coast, I'd be snakehead fishing all the time. And it's just there's something about that top water blow up. If you're going to be throwing top water, you're going to be like, holy cow, this is what I'm talking about. But you'd mentioned some of that before we started recording, and I can't stress enough: don't go there trying to utilize bowfin tactics on a snakehead. Different monster, different beast. Just a different thing. As you know, like I do, kind of curious in your bowfin tactics. If you're sight fishing for them, I mean, you can walk right up on a bowfin. You can just about stand on them and drop the lure in front of their face and get a bite. You ain't getting anywhere near a snakehead. If you see a snakehead, it's over. Like if you can see the snakehead, it's done. Your cover's blown 9 times out of 10. Like they have incredible vision. Yeah, it's just all I can say is make long casts. So
Noted.
yeah, that'll be
You can fish both in so many different ways.
yeah.
I like sight fishing them on beds. It's a good time. But it only lasts for 2 weeks, so I try to make the most of it and not spook them too much.
Yeah.
Catch one or two both in the area and then go to the next.
How long are you going to be down here for?
A week.
Okay, you'll have plenty of time to do that. I mean, you could even divert off and chase some of the other stuff. The peacock bass are all. I mean, if you're near the snakehead, you're going to be near the clown knife fish. You're going to be near the peacock bass. I mean, I think the snakehead's probably the most enjoyable one to catch out of all of them.
Listen to you leading me towards the bass here.
Yeah. Well, peacock bass. Yeah. Anyway, it's just one of those like novelty catches. I will say if you live near them, it's the first one that you lose interest in. It's like, okay, they're kind of everywhere. They're incredibly easy to catch. It's like once the thrill of seeing the colorful peacock bass is gone, you're like, yeah, this thing's kind of like a beginner's fish. It's like when my kids want to go catch fish, I take them to go catch peacock bass. So I don't want to be a peacock bass hater, but the snakeheads will challenge you. I think you're going to have a lot of fun with that. Man, you'll have to reach out and let me know when you're going to be down here. We could potentially meet up, or at the very least, I can give you some inside information on where to start your journey. I would hate for you to think that you're going to go to Miami and catch snakeheads. It ain't happening.
No, I'll be on the east side.
Well, Miami's on the east side, but it's like people think that they're everywhere, and they're not. They're you can, yeah.
definitely found that one out last year when I was at ICAST.
Yeah.
Uh, I was kind of looking forward to doing that, but then they were like, "Oh, you got to go way south for those." So
Yeah.
I ended up
Yeah.
just going for bowfin.
Yeah, people have this idea that the snakehead are absolutely everywhere and they'll eat everything in their path. And no, that's a species of fish that will absolutely challenge you, and you need to be in the right areas. So when you do come, just hit me up and I can lead you in the right direction. But that's cool. So snakeheads, and then you're thinking, the sturgeon's kind of an obvious one because they're big.
Yeah,
And I think as somebody that lives in North America, that's like the grand champion. That's the heavyweight champion. You
the
gotta
big
experience.
dino.
Yeah. And wolffish. Now, what's that? That's a random one. A lot of people don't even know what wolffish are. Where was the allure behind that? Where'd that pop up?
They just look really aggressive, and I can throw musky baits at them, and it sounds like a good time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a cool. Well, there's a lot of parallels to, well, maybe not. They always just reminded me of a big bowfin on steroids. That's why I liked them. But that's another one that's not really necessarily the same thing. You can catch them in like 40 feet of water. It's kind of a weird fish. But yeah, man, that's cool. Are you going to do ICAST again this year? Or
I'm planning
when
on
was
it.
it? Did it already happen?
No, it's in 50 days.
Okay.
It's
I'm
the second or third week of
I've always
July.
thought about going, but then I'm like, I only have so much vacation time, and I don't want to spend
It's
it to go look at other fishermen.
it's a phenomenal experience.
Yeah,
I had the amazing opportunity to go out last year, and I'm so happy it lined up to do it.
yeah. Well, that's cool, man. Well, what about in the immediate future? What about this month and the next couple of weeks? You got some stuff on the agenda, some certain types of fishing you're looking to go do.
Yeah, so till bass opener, I'll be keeping to the crappie, the gar, and the carp until bass, and then I'll fish bass for a week until they get boring, and then I'll start going for the muskie.
That's pretty cool. And then, man, 19 years old, and you're thinking about starting. Have you already begun doing a little bit of guiding, a little bit of getting the feet wet?
Yeah, I've definitely had some clients out.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, so and then that's going to be the big one. Well, what was the what's the motivation behind doing that? Having to take other people to go fishing. Some people are like, hell, I don't want to do that.
Well, I like for my whole social media was always to inspire others to fish. And if they're already inspired and they're having a hard time, why not offer a service to help them catch some fish as well?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I always thought that was a pretty noble thing to do. If ever there's a time to get into it and try it, it's probably now at the age that you're at. Um, and thinking about doing something like that where you're actually interacting with real humans and not just only doing social media or thinking that social media is going to carry you the whole way. It's just like that's the day and age. I got a lot of buddies that do guiding, and I know a lot of friends that have done guiding in a long time, and they don't have social media. They don't do social media, and it's like they're so stubbornly clinging to doing it the old fashioned way. It's kind of like, I don't know, man. It's weird times. You sort of have to be able to do both.
Yeah, a lot of the whole reason why I'm doing guiding in the first place is so many of my viewers and my supporters all asking if I can take them out, if they can pay me for spots, or stuff along those lines. And well, one day I was just like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah, I'd be careful with that one. Pay you for spots.
It's
I
it's a
always was
common
always
it's a common thing up here that people like to do for some reason.
yeah.
Send them a pin and where to park, and that's that.
I gotcha. That'll be $20. Well, we've talked about your social media a couple of times. How can people find you? What is I don't know if you do the YouTube thing. I think you
Oh, my
do.
YouTube is my most popular platform.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about
705 Angler on all platforms, and that's how to find me. Just 705 Angler or 705 underscore Angler on Instagram.
705. Is that like your area code or something?
Yes,
What is
sir.
that? I got you.
That's my
Okay.
area code.
705 Angler or 705 underscore Angler. Man, I'm gonna have to dig through some of your YouTube stuff. I have not played on YouTube enough lately, but I'm a sucker for a good fishing video. So yeah,
Currently, a lot of short form content, not too much for long form right now. Just more how tos and whatnot. But the shorts are where I've been putting up a lot of.
you got
lot
any
of
bowfin
posts.
stuff? I got to check out the bowfin stuff. If you don't, you got to make it.
There's some bowfin on there, and I got a lot of GoPro footage from this spring.
Let's go. The bowfin photos are just nasty. I mean, you were sending me those bowfin photos a few months back. I was like, God, look at them things.
Yeah, I almost broke the Ontario record last
What is the
spring.
Ontario record?
15,
Oof.
15-12.
That's a big one.
That
has become excessively rare too. That's a weird thing with bowfin is like there's a lot of records on the books of fish in the teens, but they're all from like the 80s and stuff. I mean, I only know a very small handful of people in the modern days that have ever even sniffed a bowfin in the teens. I feel like it's a fish that's become less and less. I don't know if
they have become less and less prevalent.
I don't know if they've been getting smaller.
Well. Definitely smaller. This year we pulled. Last year's average was around 6 to 8 pounds. This year we had 4 to 6. We had some of those smaller ones on beds.
It's so crazy when you catch a 10-pound bowfin, that thing looks like a monster, and then you think about one that's
5 pounds on it,
15 pounds, 17 pounds. God, can't imagine that.
Yeah, the one I got last spring clocked in at 15.2.
Oh my gosh,
just under it. And
yeah, I've targeted that fish since I was 13. And I've only caught one that was in the teens. I've seen the fish. I've hooked the fish. I've lost the fish. Only managed to catch and land one. But I probably caught over 100 that were over 12 pounds. Like this, it was like this curse. Yeah. I could not get one in the teens. I was right there. I'm like, I must have the all-time record for fish over 10 pounds, but not in the teens.
Yeah, they're pretty good at shaking the circle hooks. If you like running circle hooks, they love just not getting hooked.
It's a scary looking fish when they get that big. It's just something different. But Nolan, man, I appreciate getting you on here. You know what? I love to see more anglers, the next generation, the up-and-comer guys that are not just only doing social media, but you have this ambition to get out there and take other people out to potentially be an ambassador for some of these species of fish that have been historically underrepresented and mistreated and thrown up on the banks. Anytime that you get one of these high impact guys out there that has a voice, has a platform, has the ability to re-educate people, invaluable. So, dude, I appreciate getting you on here, and I encourage anybody that's listening to check out 705_angler on Instagram, 705 angler on YouTube. Check the show notes. I always hyperlink everything in there. If you don't want to, if you forget what I'm saying, refer back to the show notes, click the link, check this guy's stuff out, because diverse catches, a lot of freaking big fish. So, Nolan, dude, I appreciate getting you on here.
I appreciate you having me. It was a great time, and definitely looking forward to doing it again in the future.
All right, man. Have a good one.
Have a good one.
Yep. Thank you for listening to Boundless Pursuit. Tune in each week as we bring stories and insight from uniquely talented anglers and outdoorsmen. And if you enjoyed this show, I want to hear from you. Be sure to leave a 5-star review, as this is going to drive the growth and exposure of this show. And if you have feedback or guest suggestions, I would love to hear from you. And you can reach me at boundlesspursuitfishing@gmail.com. For all other collections of media and contact information, please visit www.boundless-pursuit.com.